Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan, and we are broadcasting live on July 30th from the studios of WMNF in Tampa. The primary election in Florida is less than a month away, and if you're registered, you can vote for things like judges and school board members. You can search our website, WMNF.org, for our previous coverage of school board races. And if you're registered with a political party that has more than one candidate in a race, you can vote in those races on August 20th as well. Today we're going to hear from 7 people running for the state house in Florida. Most of them will face off in November, but there is one primary race that will be decided in August. A battle for State House District 65 in Tampa is between 2 Democrats, Nathan Kuipers and Ashley Brundage. The winner of that primary will face incumbent Representative Karen Gonzalez Pittman, who is a Republican, in November's general election. We're going to hear a recent Tampa Tiger Bay Club forum, and Gonzalez Pittman was invited but did not show up at that forum, but we will hear from Kuipers and Brundage. We'll also hear from candidates in these 3 other races. This hour, we're going to hear from District 63 Representative Diane Hart, who is a Democrat, and her challenger, that is, Republican Tim Driver. We'll hear from District 64 State Representative Democrat Susan Valdez. She will face a challenger in November, Republican Mara Cruz Lands, who was invited to the forum but did not attend. And we'll also hear from District 66 Representative Fentress Driscoll, who is a Democrat, and we'll hear from her challenger, Rico Smith, a Republican. So here are all those 7 candidates. Over the next few minutes, you're going to hear them introduce themselves. This is WMNF Tampa.
Hi, thank you so much. How's everybody doing today? Oh, we can do better. How are you doing today? It is so wonderful to see you at a time where politics is so heavy. This is what I love about Tiger Bay. You are not afraid of having real dialogue and bridging gaps, and thank you for having us. I'm Fentress Driscoll. I have the honor of serving as a Democratic leader in the Florida House of Representatives, and I also represent a district in North Tampa, which includes parts of New Tampa, and then we have a University area, USF Go Bulls, all the way down to Brandon. I first ran in 2018 because I wanted to bring solutions and be more visible and accessible in my community. In a seat that was held by a Republican, I was able to win as a Democrat because I was able to build bridges and focus on how to be responsible and get things done. I believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe, and that's what I've fought for my entire life, whether it's been as an attorney, volunteering with nonprofits, but certainly as the leader of the Florida House of Representatives. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation today.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Rico Smith. I am running for District 67, which is, again, all of the USF New Tampa area down to Brandon. I'm born and raised here in Tampa, been here my entire life. I currently serve in the Air Force Reserves as a finance officer out of MacDill Air Force Base, and I also serve on the Boys and Girls Club Corporate Board of Tampa Bay, and also with the Hillsborough County Hospital Authority Board as the treasurer. I'm running on the premise to just increase that community engagement, running on the platform of prioritizing our education, enhancing our infrastructure and our roads, and tackling the property insurance crisis that we currently are faced right now. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Kuipers. That is pronounced Kuipers. You've probably seen it either on a sign or a program or something like that and wondering how the heck do you pronounce it. I call that my Pete Buttigieg issue. So it is Kuipers, and I've been running because I've been living, working, organizing, and teaching inside of this district for the last 12 years. And over the last few years, I believe we all have been able to see what the problem is. And that is that people have started to look down into their technology, whether that's phones, their tablets, their computers, and they've stopped looking out their windows to see their friends and neighbors. And instead of identifying other people as part of our community, we identify them as enemies and targets and items we can't relate with. And I just want to say that I have greatly appreciated the support and advice of several people in this room who have helped me to get to where I am, and I look forward to representing District 65 as the next Democrat. Thank you.
Well, hello. I'm Ashley T. Brundage, and I'm running for the Florida State House of Representatives, District 65, which is South Tampa, downtown Tampa, and goes northwest Hillsborough County to West Chase. I'm a small business owner, an entrepreneur, and a community leader and an advocate. I've lived in Tampa my entire life, all 44 years. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids who've gone through every single type of school that we have in our county. And I'm going to work to be a tireless advocate for Democrats, Republicans, and independents, because it's about time we start bringing people together across the issues and not talk about culture war related things that drive economy away from Florida. I'm going to be an advocate for everybody and showcase all my years of experience being an advocate, and I can't wait to do that for the residents of House District 65 in Florida. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to be here. I am Susan Valdez, your state representative for District 64, running for my senior term. You all have heard me say that before. I can't believe it's my senior year, my friends. Whew. These past 6 years have gone by so fast that it's been a whirlwind, and I can really, with my colleagues that are up here, that we came in together in 2018, can all attest to that. Well, let me tell you, my friends, the work in Tallahassee is definitely not done. As you can see, as you know, there's 120 representatives and 40 senators. We have 100 in the House, where there's 36 Democrats to 84 Republicans. So you see, being in the super minority is very challenging to get things done in a thoughtful manner, with just the intentionality of doing right by all people. So I'm looking forward to coming into our senior year and finish the work that we started. Don't forget to go vote.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pastor Tim Driver, and I am running for State House of Representatives for District 63, which includes Ybor City up through Southern Temple Terrace. I am assistant pastor of Victory Baptist Church. I'm the past president of the Hillsborough County Black Republican Club, and I have over 20 years of experience in corporate America managing software development and hardware development teams. I've also been an entrepreneur. On my platform, I'll be focusing on education, on taxes, and on economic empowerment. I am not your traditional politician, nor am I your traditional attorney becoming a politician. I am the new kid on the block, and I look forward to bringing some new, exciting ways of doing things and problem solving. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am State Representative Diane Hart. I was born and raised in the very district that I represent. I represent House District 63. That's East Tampa, Tampa Heights, downtown, West Tampa, Temple Terrace. I go all the way up to Fletcher Avenue. But I want to return to Tallahassee to continue the fight that I started in 2018. We all know that insurance is important, education is important, healthcare is important. I have worked on each and every one of these my entire 6 years. Prison reform is important. So I look forward to going back to Tallahassee to continue the work that I started when I got to Tallahassee, some of which we have managed to get across the finish line. But I just want you all to know that it is great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I look forward to your vote. That is Vote Diane Hart, House District 63. I'll see you all in Tallahassee.
Well, that was Democratic State Representative Diane Hart, and before her, we heard her Republican challenger Tim Driver in District 63, and before that, we heard District 64 Representative Susan Valdez, a Democrat. And then the 2 Democrats running in the District 65 primary, Ashley Brundage and Nathan Kuipers. And we started out with the candidates in District 67, Republican Rico Smith and Democratic incumbent Fentress Driscoll. All the candidates were asked what they would do about the high cost of insurance in Florida.
I think that the number one issue in this state is insurance costs. They're skyrocketing. I hear nothing really other than, I just heard Representative Hart talk about it. It being a super minority, it's almost impossible to get anything done with it. And it seems that there's a moratorium on Republicans passing anything to do with insurance. So just for giggles, what would be your plan, hopefully, on getting anything done with insurance? And wouldn't it be just easier to elect on the Republican side people who are actually insurance executives and just cut the middleman and not have any lobbying?
Yeah, so we'll start with Ms. Driscoll.
Thanks very much for the question. It's undeniable Florida has the highest property insurance rates in the country. And rather than focus on real solutions, what we had was a special session about a year or two ago where the Republican majority voted to give a $3 billion, that's billion with a B, dollar bailout to the property insurance industry. Where I will take a difference with you is that it is possible to get things done in the superminority. In fact, one of our star members, Representative Hillary Cassell from Broward County, led a property insurance workshop in one of our committees. She did it in a bipartisan way with Representative Spencer Roach, who's a Republican, and they talked about potential solutions. And anytime that the legislature does a workshop like that, it's because it's hopefully paving the way for future legislation. So I do anticipate that our voice would be a part of it. A few things we can do: accountability. Right now, the Commissioner of Insurance is a political appointee. I think that should be elected. The second thing is that we need to have more balanced solutions that put money in the pockets of homeowners.
Well, thank you for that question. So just last week, I actually met with the Florida Consumer Advocate, and just really gauging the temperature of what's going on now in Florida. And we're looking with the tort reform bill that was passed. It has made significant strides to alleviate what we're experiencing right now. But you look at the lag time there for it to fully come down to just policyholders themselves. Right now, there have been 8 new insurance companies that have committed now to Florida. 2 have recommitted, AAA and State Farm. And you look at what was proposed in that tort reform and that ultimately passed is the fact of, number one, the prohibiting assignment of benefits, also looking at imposing criminal penalties and fines, and looking at the eliminating the one-way attorney fees. And so these are all significant strides, and we're ultimately going to come back and we're going to tackle the real issue in the next session to make even further strides at bringing dollars back to our homeowners.
Thank you very much for that question. It's actually one of the most critical issues that faces the residents of District 65, where we've seen a dramatic increase in terms of homeowners insurance particularly. I know that the homeowners association I'm a part of and all my friends are working inside of are looking at significant increases related to insurance. Now, when it comes to being in a super minority and solving this insurance problem, I think we Democrats are particularly drawn to a broad sort of reforming regulation, and unfortunately, that's not really going to be on the table. So what we're going to need to do is find the areas we can work together with Republicans to diminish the costs that are affecting consumers, whether that's going to be creating emergency funds or writing new contracts with whatever groups they find favorable. This is going to require working closely with Republicans inside of Tallahassee, and I'll be a great candidate to do that when I get there. Thank you.
Next is Ashley Brundage.
Yeah, Nathan's right. House District 65 has some of the highest costs because we're right on the waterfront. I can tell you that as I used to be an executive at PNC Bank, and I worked there and I actually built relationships in corporate executive rooms. So I'm going to use that experience to build relationships across the aisle to get stuff done. And the other thing, also as a small business entrepreneur, I've negotiated contracts with insurance companies. So I'm going to utilize those experience levels to be the best candidate for this race. The other thing I'll tell you too on the insurance is this is a complicated problem because it needs a complicated solution. We have to ultimately hold insurance companies accountable, but we also have to give them a creative way to offset or mitigate some of the risk involved in Florida. It's the most riskiest state for writing policies, so that's driving the cost up. And then the legal industry has a part in this as well. So we have to create a bill that ties all those things together to bring real insurance reform to Florida.
Up next is Susan Valdez.
The other thing that I would add to it, again, Susan Valdez, District 64 State Representative, the only thing I would add to that is 2 things. One thing is that I would increase and support and encourage the legislature to continue to invest in mitigation projects for homeowners, because the one person we haven't talked about here is your regular folk. You know, your regular individual, your person that's retired on a fixed income, and that's a huge population in my district that is looking to being homeless, and that is really, really sad. So we haven't talked about the little guy. You know, we're talking about insurance companies, we're talking about the big guys that, you know, and that has to stop. What we need to try and do is sit down, besides putting funding into the mitigation and making it a little bit easier and user-friendly to apply for those programs. The other thing is put together a coalition of experts such as Hillary Cassell and others in the industry to come up with a real, true, comprehensive plan for the state of Florida. It's about time.
Tim Driver is next.
Pastor Tim Driver, a candidate for District 63. I am a homeowner, and I live in a Zone A flood zone area, and I feel the pinch. My insurance has increased over the last couple of years, as well as my taxes, and it's just ridiculous. I can't imagine what it must be like to be on a fixed income and to have your insurance and taxes go up to a point of where you can barely afford where you live. I think that what we need in insurance is competition. I think bringing in new insurance companies into the market, increasing competition will help drive down prices. I also believe that there's a lot of fraud that's going on that's driving the price increases, and we need to address the fraud. Thank you.
Diane Hart is next.
Thank you for the question. Both myself and Representative Bracy Davis out of Orlando met with the insurance commissioner because I believe that it is time that we give something back to our homeowners. Just as we create all the other funds that we allow people an opportunity to have some money to help offset the cost of what this insurance is doing to everybody. And we were fortunate to kind of move that along, but time ran out. So I will go back to Tallahassee and continue that conversation with the insurance commissioner because they realize just as is happening in my district, it's happening in everybody's district. We know what's needed, not to continue to reinsure our insurance companies and allow them to walk away with our money. That was one of my questions. If we provide money to an insurance company, they need to pay it back if they're going to leave the state of Florida and not insure any of our homeowners. So that is one of the things that I think we can really get done in Tallahassee this next session.
Well, that was Democratic State Representative Diane Hart, and before her, we heard her Republican challenger, Tim Driver, in District 63. Before that, we heard District 64 Representative Susan Valdez, a Democrat. And then the two Democrats running in the District 65 primary, Ashley Brundage and Nathan Kuipers, and the District 67 candidates, Republican Rico Smith and Democratic incumbent Fentrice Driscoll. All of the candidates were next asked about gun violence in Florida, and here are the responses after we hear the question, beginning with Nathan Kuipers.
Cindy Stewart, your Hillsborough County Clerk of the Court and Comptroller. Let's talk about gun violence. Gun violence, not only nationally, but here at home. What will you do to enact or bring forward legislation to ensure that our children in Hillsborough County do not end up into situations where they either have a gun, are caught with a gun and incarcerated, or injure either themselves or someone else?
Thank you, and we'll start with Mr., and I'm so sorry I mispronounced your name, Nathan.
All right, that's okay. And just for the record, it's Kuipers, y'all. And the truth is that this is going to be a complicated issue to work with Republicans on, right? In the legislature, they have a very, very different approach to gun violence than we do. In order to get to a position where we can work with them on it, I believe we're going to need to start to approach this as a public health crisis, right? Because we are experiencing such extreme levels of violence inside of the public and inside of our schools. We're going to need to figure out what we can do to work together inside of those spaces, whether that's going to be increasing security, whether that's going to be mandatory background checks. Those are things that we're absolutely in favor of. And whatever we can get the Republicans on board to do to help make sure that our students and teachers are safer, that's what I'm going to work towards. I also want to emphasize that I do not believe a teacher should ever be responsible for those security concerns. That should be something handled by the administration and people who do that for their job. Thank you.
Yeah, less guns in classrooms would be, I think, a good thing. I would say that Ashley Brundage, for the House District 65, I would also say that I have a designation for Moms Demand Action. I'm a Gun Sense candidate designation from their organization. And what I would want to do is not necessarily take away people's guns, but let's be smart about this. Universal background checks, but I think we need to do more to educate the public about guns and how powerful they are. I mean, personally, I fired weapons, so I know how to work them. And I think the more that we do to educate people about these resources, I think is really important. So I'm definitely going to work across the aisle to build relationships with people, so that way we're not just accepting money from an organization that's wanting to have more guns, but let's just be smart about it. This is our community. We have to protect our kids.
Susan Valdez is next.
Thank you for that question, or I should say thank you for that loaded question. So think about it. The president made it a public health issue in the nation. What does our governor do? Well, the governor says that he's not abiding by that calling. So that gives you a mindset of more so what may be happening in Tallahassee with this issue of gun violence, right? The conversation is not going to go anywhere. On the contrary, what I think might be coming down the pike is pretty soon a open carry bill is what I foresee happening. So what I think that we should do for Hillsborough County kids is let's get together with our local leaders here locally, and let's take care of our own kids and come up with our own policies to help protect our children here at home.
Tim Driver is next.
Pastor Tim Driver, candidate for District 63. I think that we have a universal problem with our youth in America in general. And I believe that starts with a failure in the breakup of the home. I think that from a moral standpoint, that we really need to focus on rebuilding the home. Specifically with our children and gun violence, I believe it, after focusing on the home, that we need to focus on education and firearms, specifically with our children, and have educational programs that teach youth about firearms, how to use firearms safely, proper protocol for use of firearms, etc. So education and the rebuilding of virtue in the home.
Diane Hart is next.
Thank you for that question. Gun violence in my district has been running rapid. There have been shootings every single week in District 63. I believe we start with returning the age to 21 years old for gun ownership. First of all, we must do that. We must also allow folk to get training when they have these guns. If they're not going to reduce the age, at least permits need to be what you should have, because at least that way you will get some gun training. You will know how to secure your guns. We've got to help teach our children about these guns. I don't know if they just see it kind of, they don't believe it's final. And we've got to work on that. But from Tallahassee, as legislators, we've got to go back to Tallahassee, and you all have to come with us. And when I say that, through letters, through calls, and inform our legislators, something must be done on gun violence, period.
Next is Fentress Driscoll.
Thank you. This is a very serious issue impacting our community. In fact, in the New Tampa area, we've had 3 shootings recently, and I commend the police chief and Councilman Louis Vieira for being such good partners and working together to get a town hall on this issue, and we're working on a second. But for starters, we should listen to the people. At the time where the legislature considered a permitless carry bill, there were 77% of Floridians who said they didn't want it. Over 90% of Americans say they want universal background checks. That's a supermajority of Americans. We need to be listening to the people on this issue and let them lead. So starting with universal background checks, safe storage laws, start where the people are, and then let's go from there. We've missed the mark in Tallahassee, and we've left our communities unsafe. I believe that our families deserve a shot at the American dream without the fear of being shot at, and without the fear that their kids are not coming back home. We can work on these policies in a common sense way that do not even take away a single firearm from a lawful gun owner. That's where I'm about. Let's find the balance.
Next is Rico Smith.
Well, first and foremost, we must do everything we can to ensure that the guns stay out of the hands of criminals. But we have the laws that are in place now that we can further enhance and enforce the laws that we have on the books. It stands behind looking at our law enforcement. Standing behind our law enforcement is paramount in ensuring that we can reduce this gun violence, ensuring that they have the adequate resources to have the adequate training and equipment to get out there in the community and do what needs to be done to further reduce the gun violence that we have going on. But ultimately, if you look at cities throughout the nation, LA, Chicago, San Francisco, some of the most strict gun laws, but yet they have some of the highest crime rates. It's unfortunate. It doesn't, imposing additional regulation is not the answer for that. It's the community engagement. And then here in Hillsborough County, the nationwide recidivism rate is 64%. But here in Hillsborough County, it's 11%, well below the nation average. It's because of the strong law enforcement officials that we have here. And that's why I'm glad to have Sheriff Chad Cronister's endorsement. Thank you.
That was Republican Rico Smith, a challenger for State House. Before that, we heard Representative Frenchis Driscoll and Representative Diane Hart, Tim Driver, Susan Valdez, and Ashley Brundage and Nathan Kuipers. The candidates were also asked by Mike Drapek what they would do about the high cost of living in Florida. So here are their responses, and we'll hear the first response from Ashley Brundage. This is WMNF Tampa. You're listening to Tuesday Cafe.
How can we ensure that all working families in Florida can afford basic necessities like housing, healthcare, and education, given the rising costs of living, specifically in Florida, without relying solely on market forces or trickle-down economics?
Thank you. We'll start with Ms. Brundage.
Yeah, Ashley Brundage, House District 65 candidate. I would tell you that what I was saying about insurance is a good place to start. We have to hold corporations accountable. They're seeing record level profits. And then ultimately the prices aren't necessarily changing. They're only going up. So to me, I think that if we sit in the status quo here in the state of Florida and we keep electing a supermajority in the State House of Representatives, you're going to see what's going to happen. They're not being forced to do any bipartisan legislation. And then also, I think what you should do is you should pull the campaign finance reports and see who's actually supplying the money to the supermajority party. Look and see the companies who are giving them their money. Check the PACs. Look and see exactly where the money's coming from, because that'll tell you where the rising cost is and why the legislative body isn't doing anything for us.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. So, okay, let me talk a little bit about District 64.
Sorry, Susan Valdez.
And in District 64, I have a lot of the working population that you talk about. So the way that I'm able to, under the realm of what we're dealing with, because for the last 30 years, think about it, the state of Florida has been managed by the Republicans, right? So when I look at my constituents and I hear their needs, what I have to wind up doing is having to call up to the Department of Children and Families, Aging Senior Services, to see what type of benefits and services we can provide to them, because unfortunately, there isn't a lot of help for the very well people that you're talking about, which are primarily a lot of my constituents. So when you work with 70 millionaires, it's very difficult for them to comprehend, I can't take my kid to the doctor, I can't take my kid to daycare. So those are the kinds of kitchen table items that we need to talk, and voting is super important. We gotta stop voting against our interest, and I'm out of time.
That was Susan Valdez. Next is Tim Driver.
Mike, that's a tricky question. You tied my hands by mentioning that I can't talk about market forces, because I was gonna talk about market forces. And that was the last part of your question, so you kind of tied my hands there. But I will go back to, with regards to the taxes and the insurance costs as a place to start and reducing the cost for that, which will make overall affordability for home ownership a bit more palatable.
Thank you. Representative Diane Hart, House District 63. I have worked tirelessly in Tallahassee on affordability for housing through the Sadowski Housing Trust Fund. I am happy to say that we're able to put a floor in that would allow them not to sweep all of those dollars. Those are dollars that we need right here in our city and throughout the state of Florida that will help people with down payment assistance on housing. Folks are spending more than 60% of their money on housing. Insurance is a driving force as to why people cannot afford, because it's tripling. Also, I believe that as a legislator, we've got to give the power back to our people here at home. We have got to stop being the gatekeeper. Who knows better for what's best for their people than the people directly on the ground right here at home? And we've got to get back to that. That's my solution.
That's Diane Hart. Next is Fentrice Driscoll.
Thank you for the question. So in order to understand solutions, we have to understand how we got here. Rep. Hart and Rep. Valdez alluded to it, which is that for the past 20 years, we've seen the Republican majority sweep funds from the Sadowski Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In the Tampa-St. Pete area, inflation increased over 7% from 22 to 2023. Meanwhile, wages only increased by about 1.5%. So wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. We have to invest more in affordable housing. And when it comes to the kitchen table issues, I think we need to have real conversations around that. Like, people need good jobs they can afford. We talk about lowering taxes. In Florida, we're blessed not to have a state income tax. We actually are a low tax state, and that's great. But people need to be able to afford to live. That means we need to attract new companies and new businesses here, which, by the way, the culture wars that have been waged have made it very difficult to attract new publicly traded companies, which we also need to have higher wage jobs. But it all starts with investing in affordable housing to help people be able to afford to live.
Thank you.
Rico Smith.
So Florida is a very fiscally stable and sound state, currently with over $16 billion right now in reserves. If you look at what was just this past legislation cycle, where the SHIP sale programs, right, directly going towards mitigation and being able to bring dollars back to future homeowners, looking at expanding our current sales tax holiday, all right, that can just go to further address the cost of living. These are issues that we can do, and that can be a issue that is bipartisan. But ultimately, it's looking at bringing dollars back for our constituents, ultimately, with the surplus that we have now in the Florida budget. So thank you.
Is this on? Okay,
Nathan
great.
Kuipers is up.
I think that's a really excellent question when it comes to, because we love to talk about market forces, right? I think one thing that's really important to talk about is the inflation that has incurred over the last few years is very much tied to corporate greed. We see where corporations are developing record profits. They're letting go of workers more and more often. We don't see commensurate wages. And the truth of the matter is that even the Republicans aren't going to be able to sustain that because they have low-income voters too. So it's going to come down to figuring out industry by industry what we can do to protect those lower income workers. I also think we need to make sure that we are directly addressing the housing shortages that we have in this industry, and we need to make sure that there are as many housing opportunities, and affordable housing almost sounds like a dirty word. We hear affordable housing, we hear low income housing. We need everyday American housing, and that's how we're going to fight that without mentioning market forces.
Well, that was Democratic State House candidate Nathan Kuipers. And before that, we heard Rico Smith, who is running against Fentrice Driscoll, who we heard from. Before that, we heard Diane Hart, a representative, and her challenger, Tim Driver. Before that, Susan Valdez. And we kicked that off with Ashley Brundage, who is running in the primary against Nathan Kuipers. You are listening to WMNF Tampa, 88.5 FM. This is Tuesday Cafe, and right now what we're doing is we're listening to 7 different state house candidates who will be on the ballot this year, and this was from a recent Tiger Bay Club forum, Tampa Tiger Bay Club. Thanks so much to Chris Young from WMNF for recording this for our listeners. And the next question that we're going to hear has to do with Florida's Abortion Rights Amendment 4. So here are all the 7 candidates' responses about whether they support or oppose Amendment 4, beginning with Democratic State Representative Susan Valdez.
I'm Stan Loper. I'm an architect, and I'm a Republican, and I was an architect for Metropolitan Ministries and still volunteer pro bono for them, so please don't put labels on us, okay? Yes or no, are you going to vote for amendment number 4?
Great. Thank you. We'll start with Representative Valdez.
Well, as a woman with a uterus and 2 ovaries that on men hang low, I will be voting for the protection of women's reproductive rights. I remember a time in my lifetime where my mother widowed at the age of 48 years old. I was only 10 years old, and my mom needed a man to get us a checking account. My mom needed a man to get a mortgage. Those days are long gone, and if y'all think that women today are going to want to go back to the 1920s, whoo, I got something to tell you, because watch it out in November. We're going to come out in droves, and we're going to protect our women's rights and the body, autonomy of our body.
That was Susan Valdez. Next is Tim Driver.
Well, all right. That's a tough act to follow.
Pastor Tim Driver, candidate for District 63. I believe that life begins at conception, and that that abortion is murder at any point from conception to birth, and so that's that.
Hi, I'm State Representative Diane Hart, and I am a woman too. And I truly believe that my rights are mine. This is my body. That should be a decision between me, my family, and my God, and no other man should be telling me what to do with my body. Absolutely, I will be voting. And I encourage every other woman in the state of Florida and around this nation to ensure that we have rights to protect ourselves. You know, you talk about abortion, it's not just abortion, it's health care. If a woman were to have an ectopic pregnancy today in Florida, or one of these states that say no abortions, she would die before she could get help. Is that what you men want? What we believe as women is that it's our right to protect our bodies just as you protect yours. But we have every right to decide what happens with this body, and no man or anybody else should be telling us what to do. So yes, I'm a yes on Amendment 4, 5 times yes.
That was Diane Hart. Coming up next is Fentress Driscoll.
Thank you. I'm also yes on Amendment 4 because this really is about limiting government interference in our ability to make our personal medical decisions. That's what this really is about. We do not need politicians looking over our shoulders in the exam rooms, or Tallahassee politicians telling you what's best for you and your family. You wouldn't let a politician come in and tell you how to raise your family, nor should they tell you about your family planning. I look at the crisis of maternal health that is happening in this country, and in America, we have numbers that are worse than most developing countries when it comes to women and children who are dying in or after childbirth. When you look at black maternal health, black women in Florida are 4 times more likely to die from maternal complications than our white counterparts. It's not okay. It's a healthcare crisis. And I can tell that there are passionate feelings about this on every side of the issue. And to me, allowing this decision to be between the woman, her doctor, her family, her faith, is the best way to ensure that everybody gets to make the decision that is best for them, and we keep governmental interference out of these very private decisions. Thank you.
That was Fentress Driscoll. Next is Rico Smith.
Well, this is not about turning back the hands of time. The Supreme Court ultimately decided that it is going to come to the voters in November, regardless of what comes out. When you look at what we have right now, that we can look at expanding child tax credits, working with our federal legislative partners. When you look at the adoption services, reducing the red tape and the costs around foster care services, that is what we can look at. Increasing access to health care. And ultimately, I'm voting no on that because of my beliefs and my Christian values. And this is ultimately, I think, the best way. But we can look at other avenues versus just saying, hey, we're going to put it up to a time of viability. And that is fluid for anyone to decide. So thank you.
My name is Nathan Kuipers for District 65, and not only will I be voting yes on 4, I'm proud to say I collected signatures for petitions to get it on the ballot with some of the women in this room right now, and I will continue that hard work every step of the way. I personally have never met a woman who considered abortion the most effective form of contraception, and to me that represents a lack of sex education, that represents a reliance on abstinence-only ideas, and that represents bigoted thinking about what people are going to need for their own healthcare decisions. This is something that should be between a woman, her doctor, and whoever else she thinks deserves to be part of that process, and that is it. This policy of restricting abortions to under 15 weeks is endangering the lives of pregnant women all over the state, and they have left us no other remedy. 6 weeks. Yes, thank you for the correction. And that is a medical travesty that is going to prevent women from getting the care they need from a representative who's afraid of losing their license. Thank you.
That was Nathan Kuipers. Next is Ashley Brundage.
So I'm Ashley Brundage, and I'm running for the Florida State House, District 65, and I, along with the other amazing women on this stage, we are all endorsed by Rooslist. And you know what? Rooslist is the Democratic pro-choice women's organization, so I'll be voting yes on amendment number 4. And I think it's really important that we talk about the fact that we need to get the government out of making decisions about people's bodies as a hard stop. And this also connects to amendment 3 too, because you know what? Your choices on what you do with your body and what you put in your body is your choice. And you know what else? Is that abortion actually and healthcare resources are so finite. It disproportionately affects women of color. And I think you all need to look at yourselves, and you need to look in the mirror, and you need to think about providing resources to the people in our community who really need to have access to resources.
Well, that was Ashley Brundage, who is running for the State House, and her opponent, we heard right before that, Nathan Kuipers. They'll be facing off in the Democratic primary next month. Before that, we heard Rico Smith and Fentress Driscoll, who are also running for a State House seat. They will face each other in November. Before that, we heard Diane Hart and Tim Driver, who are going to face each other in November. And earlier, we heard Susan Valdez kicking that answer off. She is also running in November. And again, her opponent, who was invited to that forum but did not attend, is Republican incumbent Representative Karen Gonzalez Pittman. This was a Tampa Tiger Bay Club forum that was recorded by Chris Young on Friday. So thanks to Chris, and thanks to the nice comments we're getting about Chris. I appreciate the emails. And we're going to continue here with the next question. For all 7 of these candidates came from Tampa City Council member Joseph Citro. He asked the candidates about the Florida legislature's habit of preempting local rules. So here is Democratic Representative Diane Hart will be the first person who will answer Joseph Citro's question.
Joseph Citro, Tampa's tree ordinance, Tampa's apprenticeship program, Tampa's clean energy resolution, Tampa's ability for rent stabilization, they all have one thing in common. They were preempted by Tallahassee. Your vote is very important, but your voice is so much stronger. What are you going to do? What are you going to say to stop Tallahassee from preempting Tampa and every other municipality in the state of Florida? We can govern ourselves.
Thank you. I believe we're starting with Representative Hart at this time. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Anybody that knows me knows that I hate preemptions, period. You know, we can continue this conversation on the House floor as we have done for the past 6 years. Everybody up here came in 2018. So I have to say to you, Joe, we need the people behind us. I have a voice, and I stand on the floor and I scream loud every single session about preemptions. In my committees, I talk about preemptions. I believe that people closest to the people should be the one governing their people, period. And I say that every day in Tallahassee. But unless we get people out to go vote, what I say in Tallahassee and what my colleagues on the other side will do means absolutely nothing. People must turn out to vote. That's the way to make those preemptions go away, and probably the only way we're going to get them to go away. We have these conversations with them, but it doesn't matter.
That was Diane Hart. Next is Fentress Driscoll.
Councilman, thank you for raising such an important issue and for putting the legislature in a greater context. We have downstream effects too. I'm so tired of preemption. I'm so tired of it. Do you know that the legislature, the Republicans in the legislature actually passed a bill that basically said that if there is a business operating in the house next to you and it's a nuisance to you, your local government can't do anything to help you with it? That's ridiculous. So what are homeowners supposed to do? Wait until the next legislative session and come seek relief from Tallahassee? Yes. Local governments know what's best for their people, and we need to get out of their business. We need to stay in their lane. Can preemption work sometimes? Maybe, if there's a way to find an efficiency. You know, there are different permitting processes and things like that. But what does Tallahassee have to say to Tampa about the trees in the city and its canopy and protecting it? It's ridiculous. It's a waste of your taxpayer dollars when they have to pay for my flight to go to Tallahassee and deal with that mess, which your local government is best equipped to do. So I will continue to fight against preemptions every session. Thank you.
That was Fentress Driscoll.
Thank you so much. It
Rico
starts
Smith.
with building that coalition, up, down, and out. And ultimately, I fully believe that home rule is preeminently what should take place. When you look at the people in the community know what their community needs and what is ultimately best. But it also takes having that open dialogue as well and knowing what people on the ground are saying, working with our county and local municipality colleagues for that, and being their voice up in Tallahassee. And that's one thing that I will do when I serve this upcoming November. Thank you.
That was Rico Smith.
Thank you for
Nathan
that
Kuipers.
excellent question, Councilman. And it does come down to the fact, in my mind, that the Democratic Party has been led into super minority status over the last several years. My background has been inside of voter registration, and I mentioned earlier today that voter registration organizations are not participating the same way they have in previous elections because they've been legally harassed by that Republican supermajority. Once I'm in Tallahassee, I'll be able to confront them about that. I'll be able to make changes about that, and I'll be able to work with those organizations, actually possibly even designing training for them to overcome that problem. We have seen the bottom fall out in the Democratic Party from the people who usually show up in 2022, and a huge part of that was the result of the voter registration organizations. The other thing is that this campaign has been defined by the time that I spend on the ground in the community with the people of it, and that's the work that we'll need our public officials to be doing in order to start getting people to believe in the Democratic Party and its leaders again. Thank you.
I think you all know the position on home rule. It's a waste, and we need to be really purposeful around how we as Tampanians and Hillsborough County residents work together to get our voice represented. That happens when you choose who to be your state representative. We have to take back 5 seats. The Democrats, if they win five more seats and keep the existing ones we have, then we'll have an opportunity to even have an equal voice in Tallahassee. This is the problem. The supermajority is the problem. It's exactly why you need to work hard to flip districts that are flippable, like House District 65. This is a seat that can actually be won by a Democrat, and it's important to work together and build relationships so that way the city isn't affected. So thank you, Councilman Citro, for your question around home rule, because you deserve the opportunity to actually govern the way that you were elected by the cities.
Thank you, Joe, for that question. And I'm proud to say that for the last several years, since elected, I've had the distinction from the League of Cities Award of Legislator of the Year for them, because we champion those types of issues in Tallahassee. There's nothing more important than local control. I look to my school board friends here, Nadia, and look at the preemptions that we've put upon them as well. So the issue is this. I can't agree more, and I hate to be harping on the fact that the super minority. And the fact is that we continue to vote against our own interests. Either we get disgusted by not wanting to go vote because we don't have a desire to go vote or an attraction to go vote. But my friends, being an American is the most beautiful thing. In order for us to continue having the democracy that we have, it is your duty, it is our duty, not a right, but our duty as citizens of this great nation and state to go out to vote on every single election and vote on behalf of our interests.
That was Susan Valdez. Next is Tim Driver.
Pastor Tim Driver, candidate for District 63. I do believe that local government has the best ability to govern by the people of that community, of that government. However, I also believe that pre-exemptions should exist. There are always exceptions. There are always the broader picture sometimes that you have to look at of the impact of some of the decisions that are being made. And so consequently, being able to preempt and have those exceptions, I think is important and necessary.
Well, that was State House candidate Tim Driver. He's a Republican. Before that, we heard Susan Valdez. We heard Ashley Brundage and Nathan Kuipers. We heard Rico Smith and Fentress Driscoll. And we started out with Diane Hart answering that question about preemption. And I want to read an email or two that came in. We had, as I said, we had some compliments for Chris. Also, Bert writes in and says, our government needs to focus and regulate Mother Earth, not a mother's birth. And he says, thanks for another great show from the 88.5 news team. So I appreciate that comment, Bert. And in the last couple of minutes we'll be able to hear both candidates from one of the districts, Fentress Driscoll and Rico Smith. Fentress Driscoll is a Democrat and a state house representative. Her challenger is Republican, Rico Smith. We're going to hear them answer this question about education. Again, this is WMNF Tampa. We're listening to candidates talk about the issues.
Lynn Gray, school board member, Hillsborough County Public Schools. Recently, we had a vote taken by the BOCC. CIT tax, which is your capital building funds, reduced from 25% to 5%, slamming another deficit. Was I believe it was yesterday, a 4-3 majority voted against a teacher raise, bus driver raise operations known as the millage. We wanted to put it on the ballot for every one of you all to say yes or no. That was not allowed. I want to know what your vote would be on the latter, the the millage, and why. Would you put it on the ballot? Why or why not?
Okay, I forgot how long that question was. I apologize. I will put the full forum up on our website, WMNF.org, so you can listen to it there. But we have run out of time for today's show, and thanks for that question. But you can hear the responses by all the candidates on our website, WMNF.org, within the next hour or so. And again, there's a primary election on August 20th. Two of the candidates we heard today will be on that ballot. Democrats Ashley Brundage and her primary opponent Nathan Kuipers will be on the August 20th primary election in that district 65 that's part of Tampa. Also, we heard from candidates Diane Hart and Tim Driver, who are facing off in District 63. Diane Hart is the incumbent. In District 64, we heard from Susan Valdez, who is the incumbent representative, Democrat there. She'll face a challenger in November, Republican Maura Cruz Lands. She was invited to this forum but did not attend. And District 66, Fentress Driscoll is the representative there. She's a Democrat, and she's getting challenged by Rico Smith, who is a Republican. We heard those people today from that Tiger Bay Club forum, and thanks to Chris Young for recording that for us. Beginning Thursday, WMNF.org will have a list of all of the candidates in the state and federal races, along with their responses about things like the environment, abortion, property insurance, and the constitutional amendments. So I hope you check that out. And if you missed any of today's show, you can listen again on our website, WMNF.org. This has been WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan. During this time slot tomorrow, Shelley will host Midpoint, and her guest will be from DeSantis Watch. They will answer about whether Florida is a laboratory for Project 2025. Coming up next is Wavemakers with Janet and Tom Scherberger. They'll discuss Amendment 3 with people for and against the amendment to legalize the recreational use of cannabis for adults in Florida. Then at noon is Wide Awake America with Nadine Smith. She welcomes Keith Boykin, a renowned author, journalist, and political commentator. Keith shares his insights on race, politics, and the current state of democracy in America. This has been Tuesday Cafe, coming to you live on July 30th, 2024 from the studios of WMNF Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, and Lakeland. Thanks so much for listening.